Looking back, I never imagined my life would turn into some twisted drama like this. For the longest time, I thought Kate and I were a typical happy couple. We had our ups and downs like anyone else, but we made it work, or at least it's what I told myself. We just moved into this new neighborhood, a fresh start, I thought. A place where we could make new memories, get to know the neighbors, and live our so-called peaceful life. And things started well enough. We quickly clicked with Mike and Laura, who lived next door. Mike, I'll give it to him, had that type of confidence that pulls people in. A successful businessman, smooth talker, always seemed like he knew what he was doing. Laura was the opposite, quiet, reserved, but sweet. I used to joke that they balanced each other out perfectly. Little did I know, that perfect balance was just a goddamn illusion. At first, everything felt normal, better than normal even. Kate seemed happier. We'd spend our weekends exploring new spots in town, trying different restaurants, going for hikes. But like all those picture-perfect things, the cracks started to show. And they didn't just show, they split wide open, and I couldn't unsee them once I caught a glimpse. The first sign that something was off with Kate came out of nowhere. She started spending a lot more time meeting with friends, which she'd never done much before. It's not that I didn't want her to have her own life. I'm not that guy, but when the girls' nights turned into staying out until God knows when, it was different. There were excuses, too. Staying late at work, traffic was terrible, lost track of time. Always something. Then there was the phone thing. The damn phone. She kept it on silent like 24/7. Kate used to leave her phone lying around, charging somewhere, not really caring about it. Now it was glued to her hand or hidden away in her bag. I get it, privacy is one thing, but it was more like she had something to hide. And then she'd get these texts, right? Her face would light up, and she'd laugh a little, type something back quickly, and the smile would disappear the moment she saw me looking. She got good at hiding it, too. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. You know that gut feeling that nags at you, but you try to shut it down because you don't want to seem like some jealous asshole? That was me for months. Her attitude changed, too. Kate had always been the one to initiate date nights, cuddle up on the couch, make plans. But suddenly, it felt like she could barely stand to be in the same room with me. Our conversations turned cold, distant, and it wasn't just the usual marital stuff. It was like she was there, but she wasn't. I started to feel like a ghost in my own house, walking around her while she pretended I didn't exist. I tried to push it all down, tell myself it was just a phase, work stress, anything, but every time I did, something else would happen to throw it back in my face. One night, she came home reeking of a cologne that wasn't mine. And sure, maybe she brushed past someone in a bar or hugged a friend, but it was strong, too strong to be an accidental brush-off. And that's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I'm not proud of it, but I started doing things I never thought I'd do. I started keeping an eye on her, checking when she'd leave, when she'd come back. I'd look at her calendar, see if her late work nights lined up, and they did at first, until one day they didn't. That's when I caught her meeting with Mike. Yeah, good old friendly neighbor Mike. Mr. Charisma himself. I followed her that day, which felt insane, like I was going crazy becoming that guy. But I couldn't help it. She'd been acting too weird, and my head was spinning with all the possibilities. So there I was, trying to keep my distance, feeling like some kind of amateur detective, and there they were, sitting together at a cafe just a few blocks from our neighborhood. And it wasn't a work meeting or a friendly chat. The way they leaned in close, the way she laughed at his jokes, it was like watching her on a date. Her smile, her eyes, all the little things that used to be for me, now aimed right at Mike. I remember feeling this pit in my stomach like the ground was falling out from under me. I snapped a picture right then. A part of me thought, maybe you're jumping to conclusions, but deep down I knew. I just knew. That was the first time I felt that raw, unmistakable feeling of betrayal. But it wouldn't be the last. No, this was just the beginning of the nightmare that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and who Kate really was. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know more, needed to be sure. And I couldn't talk to Laura either. I mean, what do you say? Hey, just a heads up, I think your husband is banging my wife. No, I had to keep quiet. At least for a little while longer. The truth is, keeping all that rage bottled up was killing me. Everywhere I went, I saw Kate and Mike in my head, laughing, talking, touching. Every time I looked at her, I felt sick. Every time I saw him, I wanted to punch that smug smile off his face. But I kept my cool, at least on the outside. On the inside, I was a mess, a tornado of anger, confusion, and a little bit of fear. Fear of what came next. Fear of how this would change everything. One afternoon, while I was pacing around the neighborhood trying to clear my head, I bumped into Laura. She was out walking her dog, and for a second I considered just nodding and moving on. I mean, what was I supposed to say to her? How could I even look her in the eye, knowing that her husband was screwing my wife? But she called out to me, and there was no backing out of it. So I played along, made small talk, asked how she was doing. I remember watching her as she talked. She had this gentle way about her, a bit shy, a bit quiet. But I could tell there was something beneath that soft exterior, something sharper, more perceptive. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, but I could swear I saw the sadness in her eyes, like she was carrying a weight of her own. And that's when it hit me. Maybe she knew. Maybe she had her own suspicions. Or maybe she was just like me, trying to make sense of a life that was slowly spiraling out of control. So I tested the waters. I brought up relationships, just casually, like I was making small talk. Asked how she and Mike were doing, mentioned how busy Kate had been with work. And that's when she let her guard down. She sighed, gave this tired smile, and said that things had been distant between her and Mike. He'd been more preoccupied lately, working late, distracted. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounded like a damn echo of my own marriage. But what really hit me was how she said it, like she was used to it, like she'd convinced herself that it was normal. She kept talking about how she trusted Mike, how they'd been through rough patches before, but he'd always been loyal in the end. I wanted to scream, to shake her, and tell her to wake up, but I held back. I couldn't just drop it on her, at least not yet. But the more she talked, the more I realized that she had no clue. She was living in the same lie I'd been living in, trying to rationalize all the warning signs. And I hated it. I hated seeing that look of hope in her eyes, knowing that it was built on nothing but lies. So I decided to do what had to be done. I couldn't let her live in the dark, not when I knew the truth. "Laura," I finally said, and she must have noticed the change in my voice because she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "There's something I need to tell you. It's about Mike and Kate." She looked confused at first, then wary. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath. I couldn't hold it in anymore. They're having an affair." And there it was. The words hung in the air like poison, and for a moment I thought she was going to faint. She blinked, shook her head, like she was trying to clear it, like she was refusing to believe what I'd just said. That's not possible," she stammered, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "You must be mistaken. Mike, he wouldn't." "Laura," I interrupted, "I wish I was wrong. I really do. But I'm not. I've seen them. I followed Kate one day, and she met up with Mike. They were together, and it wasn't just some friendly meeting. It was intimate." She still didn't believe me. She was shaking her head, looking at me like I was crazy, like I was making it all up. So I did what I had to do. I pulled out my phone and showed her the picture I'd taken at the cafe. The way Kate leaned into Mike, the way he touched her arm, it was all there, clear as day. And when Laura saw it, I saw the moment it all clicked. The moment her whole world shattered. She grabbed the phone from my hand, staring at the photo like she was trying to burn a hole through it. Her breathing got heavier, her eyes filled with tears, and then the rage came. She tossed the phone back to me, muttering, "That son of a bitch." We sat on a bench after that, neither of us saying much. What could we say? Everything we thought we knew about our lives, our marriages, had been torn apart in an instant. And as much as I hated Mike and Kate, my heart broke for Laura. She didn't deserve this. Neither of us did. But when the tears stopped, when the shock wore off, something else took its place. Anger. Pure, unfiltered anger. Laura clenched her fists, staring off into the distance, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. They think they can just get away with this? She muttered. They think we're just going to sit back and let them do this to us? I shook my head. Not a chance, I said. They're not going to get away with it. We're going to make them pay. And that's when we came up with the plan to give Mike and Kate a taste of their own medicine. I know it sounds crazy, but we were both running on pure emotion at that point. Revenge was the only thing that made sense, the only thing that felt right. And the idea was simple. Make sure they catch us together. Make sure they walk in on us in a moment they can never forget. Let's set a trap, Laura said, her voice low and fierce. Let's make sure they see it, every second of it. Let them know what it feels like. I nodded, feeling that same rage, that same thirst for vengeance. I knew this wasn't just about payback. It was about taking back control, about not letting them think they could destroy our lives and walk away unscathed. And hell, maybe it was also about feeling something, anything other than the pain they'd caused. Laura and I started plotting. We found a night when we knew Mike and Kate would be out, probably sneaking around like they usually did. We made sure they'd come home at just the right time, and when they did, they'd find us together. We were going to make sure they saw everything, that they understood just how badly they'd screwed up. I don't know if what we did was right. Honestly, I don't even care. All I know is that at that moment, it felt like the only way to reclaim a little bit of what they'd stolen from us. And we were ready to do whatever it took to make them pay. I'll tell you, planning revenge is a hell of a lot easier than living it. When Laura and I sat there, plotting how to tear down their little love affair, it all seemed so clear. Get together, make sure they see us, let them feel the burn. Simple. But the closer we got to that night, the more I realized how complicated it all was, how much pain we were both carrying around. But we were committed. No turning back. We picked the date carefully. A Friday night when we knew they'd be out, probably pretending to be somewhere respectable while sneaking around behind our backs. We guessed they'd use the same excuse they always did, and we were right. Kate told me she had to work late again, big project or some crap, and I pretended to buy it, gave her that fake supportive smile she probably thought I still believed in. Laura said Mike had some networking dinner, and when he left the house that evening, I knew they were together. Just like we'd planned, Laura came over to my place, and the tension in the air was thick. We both knew what was coming, what we had to do, but that didn't make it any easier. There was this unspoken weight between us, a mix of nervousness, anger, and sadness. And I remember Laura standing in the doorway, just staring at me for a second, like she was trying to find the right words but couldn't. I didn't know what to say either, so I just invited her in, poured us both a drink, and we sat in silence for a few minutes, letting it all settle in. Eventually we started talking, not about the plan, but about everything else, our lives, our marriages, our feelings. Laura opened up in a way I'd never seen before. She talked about how she felt like a ghost in her own home, like she was invisible to Mike, how every time he touched her, it felt forced, like he was going through the motions. I told her about how Kate's smile had gone cold, how she used to look at me like I was the only man in the world, but now I was just there, just a piece of furniture. It's hard to describe, but sharing that pain with someone who truly understood felt like peeling back this layer of numbness I didn't even realize I had. And that closeness, it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about finding comfort in someone who'd been hurt just as deeply. Before I knew it, we were holding each other, holding on like we'd fall apart if we let go. And maybe we would have. The kiss happened naturally, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. 1 second we were talking, the next our lips were on each other, and for a brief moment, all the anger, all the betrayal, melted away. It was just the two of us trying to forget, trying to feel alive again. I'm not going to pretend it was some romantic, perfect moment. It was messy, it was raw, but it was real, and it was what we both needed right then. One thing led to another, and we ended up in my bed, bodies tangled together in a way that felt both desperate and freeing. I didn't care about Mike, about Kate, about the consequences. All that mattered was that Laura and I were in this together, that we could lose ourselves in each other and forget, just for a little while, the mess our lives had become. The sex wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet. It was driven by this mix of rage, lust, and an unspoken understanding that we were both broken, and maybe this was our way of trying to put the pieces back together. We didn't know exactly when they'd be back, but we made sure we were ready. The plan was to give them the show of their lives, make sure they saw every second of what we were doing. And when I heard the front door open, when I heard their voices, Mike laughing about something, Kate chiming in with that familiar flirty giggle, I felt my heart pounding out of my chest. Laura must have felt it too because she squeezed my hand, giving me that look that said, "Let's do this." The next few moments were like a slow-motion train wreck, one I couldn't tear my eyes away from. They walked in, right into the living room, and then we were tangled up in each other right on the couch. Laura's back was to them, but I could see their faces, the shock, the horror, the rage. Mike's eyes went wide, and he stood there frozen for a second, like his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. Kate! Oh, Kate! Her face twisted into this mix of fury and disgust, like she couldn't believe I'd stooped to this, like I was the one who'd betrayed her. And then all hell broke loose. Mike charged at me, shouting something I couldn't even understand. I barely had time to roll off the couch before he was on me, throwing a wild punch that missed my face by inches. I got up, pushed him back, and we were standing there, fists up, ready to tear into each other. "Are you out of your goddamn mind, Alex?" Mike screamed, his voice cracking like he couldn't believe what was happening. Am I out of my mind? I shot back. "How long have you been screwing my wife, Mike? How long?" Kate started yelling, too, her voice high and shrill. "How could you do this to me, Alex? After everything we've been through, everything we've been through?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean like all those late nights with Mike? How could I do this? How about you explain yourself for once?" Laura, still sitting there, wrapped herself in a blanket, staring daggers at Mike. "I guess now you know how it feels," she said coldly, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. The shouting match went on for what felt like forever. Accusations, curses, insults flying back and forth. Mike and Kate tried to make it about us, tried to paint Laura and me as the villains, but we stood our ground. We laid it all out, every lie, every secret. And in that moment, I saw the realization hit them. I saw it in their eyes, the guilt, the shame. They had no defense, no excuse, because the truth was laid bare for all of us to see. Mike lunged at me one last time, and I shoved him back hard enough that he stumbled and fell, taking a lamp down with him. Kate screamed and ran to his side, like I'd just hurt her precious lover, and that's when I knew I was done. Done with the lies, the cheating, the bullshit excuses. Let them have each other. They deserved whatever came next. Laura and I walked out of that house together, leaving Mike and Kate behind, tangled up in their own mess. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like the world was crashing down around me. I felt free. And yeah, it was messy, it was chaotic, but it was real. And I knew that whatever came next, I'd be ready for it. The dust didn't settle after that night. It only got thicker, suffocating everything in its path. You think confronting the truth would make things better, like ripping off a Band-Aid, letting the wound finally heal. But that was just the beginning, the start of a war that burned down everything around us. The next morning, I woke up in my own house, my bed feeling emptier than ever. Kate hadn't come home, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. I figured she was either with Mike or hiding out somewhere, trying to wrap her head around everything. I could only imagine the conversation they were having, how they were trying to spin this whole thing as my fault, as Laura's fault. But I didn't care. Let them twist the story however they wanted. It didn't change what they did. Around midday, the storm finally hit. Kate showed up, bursting through the door like a bat out of hell, face red and eyes wild. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed, her voice cracking like she was already on the verge of tears. "How could you do this to us? To me?" I sat there on the couch, my face blank, letting her words bounce off me like nothing. I was done being the guy who took the blame, The guy who bent over backward to make her happy. I let her shout, let her rant, let all her fury spill out, until she finally stopped, breathing hard, waiting for me to respond. You done? I asked, my voice cold, detached. It seemed to throw her off because she just stood there, mouth open, not knowing what to say. I got up slowly, walked over to her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I looked her right in the eye. No fear, no hesitation. You want to talk about betrayal, Kate? About ruining what we had? You have a nerve to come in here, after everything, and play the victim? Do you even hear yourself? You slept with Laura, she shouted back, like that was her winning argument, like that was going to change everything. You're no better than me. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that cut through the silence. Yeah, I did. And you know why? Because you did it first. Because I was sick and tired of living in this lie, tired of pretending we were still something we weren't. I paid you back, Kate. And let's be real. You had it coming. Her face twisted in anger, but there was a flash of something else there, too. Shame. Guilt. I saw it clear as day, and it felt satisfying. For the first time, I didn't care about her tears or her broken voice. I didn't care that she was hurt. All I cared about was making her own up to what she'd done, to see her finally face the truth. It wasn't like that, she said weakly, and I could tell she was struggling to keep up the act. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Alex. I was confused. I was lonely. You don't understand. I don't understand? I interrupted, stepping closer, feeling the anger bubbling up in my chest. You're right, Kate, I don't understand. I don't understand how you could do this to me, to our marriage. I don't understand how you could look me in the eyes every damn day and lie, over and over again. And don't even start with the excuses. You were lonely? Well, guess what? I was lonely too. But I didn't go screwing around with the neighbor. That was all you. She crumbled then, her defenses cracking as the tears started flowing. I'm sorry, she sobbed, her hands shaking as she reached out to touch me. I'm so sorry, Alex. I never meant to hurt you. Please, we can fix this. We could try again, I swear. Stop, I said, pulling away from her touch like it burned. There's no fixing this, Kate. No trying again. I'm done. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. We both do. And that was it. I walked out of the room, left her standing there in her own mess of tears and regrets. And for once, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to save, nothing left to fight for. I was done pretending. Over the next few days, everything blew up. The neighbors caught wind of the whole mess. How could they not, with all the shouting and slamming doors? And suddenly, our once friendly little block turned into a battlefield. Mike tried to confront me a couple of times, but I shut him down quick. He'd come over, all high and mighty, trying to make me the villain, but I wasn't having it. Go fix your own marriage, Mike, I told him. Or don't. I don't give a shit, but stay the hell out of my face. Laura wasn't having any of it either. I remember seeing her and Mike screaming at each other in their driveway one night, and it hit me just how far we'd all fallen. What was once this picture-perfect image of two couples, happy and in love, was now a war zone, and the lines were drawn clear. There was no going back. Laura filed for divorce the very next week, and I knew I had to do the same. The whole process felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Meetings with lawyers dividing assets, arguing over who gets what, none of it felt real. But it was real, and I had to face it. Kate, of course, tried to make it all about saving what we had. She'd call, text, show up unannounced, begging for one more chance, saying we could go to counseling, start fresh, all that bullshit. I'd never seen her so desperate, so pathetic. I don't know what she was more afraid of, losing me or losing the life we'd built. But either way, it didn't matter. My mind was made up. Why, Alex? She cried one day, standing in our kitchen, clutching a half-empty bottle of wine like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Why can't we just try? I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but we can make it better. Please. I love you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and all I saw was a stranger. A stranger who'd lied, cheated, destroyed everything we'd once had. I don't love you anymore, Kate, I said, my voice steady, final. And you don't love me. Maybe you did once, maybe I did too, but not anymore. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life pretending like that's enough. She broke down then, collapsing onto the floor, sobbing like her world was ending. And maybe it was, but I didn't comfort her. I didn't hold her or tell her it was going to be okay. I let her cry, let her feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused. I wasn't going to be her savior anymore. She didn't deserve it. So that was that. The end of our marriage. The end of the lies. And while it felt like a million knives were stabbing into my chest, I knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't keep living in that nightmare, couldn't keep pretending we could go back to what we once were. Mike and Kate could have each other. They deserved each other, two lying, cheating snakes wrapped up in their own toxic mess. And me? I was ready to burn it all down, walk away, and start over, ready to take back my life, one step at a time. Filing for divorce wasn't a relief. It felt like jumping headfirst into a storm I knew would wreck whatever was left of my old life. And if you think ending a marriage is just about signing some papers and calling it quits, think again. It's a long, messy, and brutal battle. And with Kate, it felt like a war that dragged on forever. I remember that first meeting with the lawyer, sitting across from a guy who seemed way too calm for what I was about to put on his plate. I laid it all out there, sparing none of the gritty details. The cheating, the lies, the confrontation. It was like ripping open an old wound, letting it bleed out in the middle of some sterile office. And my lawyer just nodded, scribbling notes, already figuring out how to strategize the best way to split our life down the middle. The process itself was hell. Kate was relentless, and any hope I had for a clean break evaporated the second she got her own lawyer involved. Suddenly, it was all about money, property, and who got what. She wanted the house, of course she did. She wanted alimony, claiming she needed support because her career wasn't as stable as mine. I was stunned by the audacity. Here was this woman, who'd spent God knows how long screwing around behind my back, and now she expected me to pay for her to move on? Not on my watch. We fought over everything. The car, the furniture, even the damn coffee maker. Every time we met, every email from her lawyer, it was like a dagger aimed right at me. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't going to let her walk away with whatever she wanted just to avoid a fight. I was done rolling over for her, done letting her dictate how this was going to end. I fought back. I made sure my lawyer knew exactly what we were dealing with and that we'd push for a fair division of our stuff. Nothing more, nothing less. The arguments were endless, and they bled into every aspect of my life. Work, sleep, even when I was out trying to distract myself with friends or hobbies, it all came back to this one painful process. Every time I thought we were close to a resolution, Kate would pull some stunt, try to drag it out just a little bit longer. Maybe she was still hoping I'd cave, that I'd throw my hands up and give her whatever she wanted. But I wasn't that guy anymore. During all of this, I didn't hear much from Mike. Not directly, at least. Laura and I had agreed early on not to keep dragging each other back into the mess, to let each other fight our own battles. After that one explosive night, we both realized that whatever we shared, whatever we'd done, wasn't something we could carry forward. It was a moment, a burning flare of revenge and raw emotion, but it wasn't real. We didn't regret it, but we knew it wasn't the start of anything new. Just two people trying to find some comfort in each other's shattered lives. And that was okay. Laura and I stayed in touch, supporting each other as we both trudged through our divorces. But it was different now. Platonic, more like two survivors helping each other out of the wreckage. And I think that's what we both needed. A friend who understood, without all the complications of whatever relationship we might have had. There was no drama, no expectations, just an understanding that we'd both been through the fire, and we were still standing. It was around this time that I started to claw my way back to something that felt like a life of my own. It wasn't easy. Hell, I didn't even know where to start. For months, my whole world had revolved around Kate, around our marriage, and then around the mess of unraveling it all. But now it was just me, just Alex. And it was time to figure out what that actually meant. I hit the gym hard. I'd always worked out here and there, but this time it was different. It wasn't about getting in shape or looking good. It was about having a place to pour all that anger, all that pain, and sweat it out until I couldn't feel anything but exhaustion. And in a weird way, it worked. Each session was like chiseling away at the old broken parts of myself, rebuilding piece by piece. There were days I didn't want to go, days where I just wanted to lie in bed and let the world pass me by. But every time I got up and pushed through, I felt a little stronger. Outside the gym, I started picking up old hobbies, things I'd let fall to the side over the years. I dusted off my guitar, started jamming again, letting the music drown out all the noise in my head. I went out hiking, fishing, just getting away from everything that reminded me of my old life. I even reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, guys I hadn't seen in years because I'd been too wrapped up in my marriage. And damn, it felt good. It felt good to laugh, to drink, to just be myself without constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what Kate was doing, where she was, or who she was with. Every day was a little easier than the last. I started sleeping better, waking up without that heavy feeling in my chest. And sure, there were moments where I'd be hit with a wave of memories, a flash of what we used to have, and it'd hurt. But I was learning to let those moments pass, to not hold on to them so tightly. Because holding on to the past was like holding on to broken glass. Nothing but pain and blood. The divorce process still dragged on, of course, but it became more like background noise. Kate and I were barely speaking, only communicating through lawyers, and that was fine by me. Every day that went by, I felt the grip of that old life loosen, and I could see a new horizon forming in the distance. A horizon that didn't have her in it. It's funny how you go through something like this, and it changes you, not just in the ways you expect, but in ways you never saw coming. I didn't come out of this with a new love or some fairy tale ending, but I came out of it stronger, clearer on what I wanted, on who I was. And that felt like more than enough. For once, I wasn't trying to fix someone else's life. I wasn't trying to make a broken marriage work. I was just living one day at a time, one step at a time, moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Like the weight had finally been lifted. Like I was finally free. The day my divorce was finalized wasn't some big celebration. It was just a quiet end to a brutal chapter. Once it was over, I felt a weight lift, like the storm had finally passed. Kate and I were done. The ties cut. And the anger I'd carried around started to fade. I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to let go and move on. Life after divorce was about rediscovery. I had to relearn how to live for myself, to rebuild my routine, and to find joy in things that had nothing to do with us. I hit the gym hard, picking up running, boxing, and even hiking, anything that made me feel alive again. Reconnecting with old friends, jamming on my guitar, just enjoying the simple things. Each step brought me back to who I was, or maybe who I was meant to be. Laura and I didn't pursue anything more than friendship after our night together. It was a moment we needed, but it didn't define our future. We supported each other through the divorce process, sharing our struggles, but keeping things platonic. I appreciated that. We both needed a clean slate. I dated a bit, went out more, and started meeting new people, not rushing into anything, but just living. And yeah, Kate's memory would pop up now and then, but the sting had dulled. Instead of holding on to the past, I learned to let it go, finding comfort in my own company and the life I was building. Every struggle, every sleepless night had shaped me into someone stronger, happier. And when I looked in the mirror, I finally recognized the person staring back. It wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about moving forward and finding peace in who I am now. And that was enough.